I want to let you know about the most scarring experience that has ever happened to me. Back in 2010, I was browsing through eBay just looking for some retro-style arcade games to add to my little man cave in my basement. Something reminiscent of the 80s to relive a bit of my childhood. After about the 6th page of results, I found what I was looking for. The Clown Times pinball machine. It was the same one my local pizza joint had by the front door. The amount of time I spent playing that after school and on the weekends was something else. The auction was done in 20 minutes, so I quickly placed a bid of $50 over the previous one and prayed. The timer had counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I had won. I jumped for joy and counted the days until I received it. A crate showed up 2 weeks later containing my then prized possession. After some careful maneuvering, I managed to get it down the stairs. I opened it up and placed it where it would stay, at least until after the incident. There it was, just as I remembered it. The metallic balls nestled in their home, waiting for the spring to make contact and send them on their marvelous journey. The flippers ready to shoot the balls, keeping them in a steady rhythmic motions as the points grew. Even the circus tent sat ready to twirl, which added the excitability of the randomness of the machine. All the paint looked like it had just been hand painted. Not a crack or chip in place. On the top of the scoreboard sat the main attraction, the smiling clown who as a child I nicknamed Flipper the Clown. His white painted face with shocking blue wide eyes, red nose, and that warm red painted smile that beckoned children into play when I was a kid. I plugged it in. The sound of the machine rumbling as the lights shone bright. The flippers banged their welcoming song, and the happy melody played through the speakers. "Come clown around," chimed out and I knew I was home. I plucked a quarter out of my pocket and placed it inside the slot. I pulled the launcher, sending the ball up over the curve. It flew around bouncing off every nook and cranny to then drop down racing towards the flippers. I pressed the button a second too late, tumbling into the bottom and ending my game. I guess I was a little rusty, but could only get better. I spent the rest of my night playing with my new machine, having the time of my life. The first few days with the new machine were pretty normal. I played after work each day, getting my skills back to that of my 12-year-old self. The only issue that seemed to arise as it would randomly turn on in the middle of the night. I chalked it up to being a small short in a wire somewhere, but since it was working perfectly fine, I had decided to leave it be. Around the 4th day, I began waking up tired. I figured maybe all the lights and sounds from the machine were screwing with my body a bit, so I decided I would limit myself to an hour before supper and take the rest of the night off. When I walked downstairs and walked up to the machine, I began staring at the clown head. I had never noticed the shadows under its eyes or how much the mouth was slightly open, showing sharp jetted teeth. I guess I had been too excited to notice. I played the arcade game for 3 rounds and walked upstairs, proud of myself that I had that much restraint that I'd be able to go to bed early. Only when I walked upstairs, it was pitch black outside. Walking into the kitchen, the clock read 1:06 a.m. That couldn't be. I was only downstairs for like 45 minutes. I thought to myself how I must have enjoyed it that much that I spaced out. I walked to the computer and sent a quick email to my boss, telling him I wouldn't be in the next day because I was sick, and then I went to bed. The next day, I didn't wake up until 4 in the afternoon. I had never slept in that late, so I got up and had an intense urge to go back to the pinball machine. I walked downstairs, greeting the clown. Was his mouth wider? I shook my head thinking I must still be groggy from sleeping that much, so I began playing. I played for a bit and had a really good time. After about an hour, I decided to go up and make myself food, but just like the night before, the clock read 1:06 a.m. This repeated for a whole week, and I could do nothing to stop it. It was as if I was entranced by the machine. On the 8th day of my new schedule, my sister showed up unexpectedly for supper since she hadn't heard from me. I guess she had to use her key because she knocked, but because I was playing the game, I didn't even hear her. She came downstairs to talk to me, spinning me around when I didn't answer. Later, she told me my face was pinned in a huge smile while my eyes looked sunken into my head. I blinked a few times until I realized she was there, and then had to shake my head to get my senses back. She explained how I disappeared for a week and everyone was worried that something had happened to me. She told me she was taking me to eat and practically dragged me out of the house. As the summer air hit my face, I was able to think clearly for the first time in a while. Something was wrong with that machine. While we ate, we chatted about all that had been happening, and she told me I needed to find the seller and return the machine. There was a problem with that. The seller, the listing, and even our whole conversation were gone from eBay. How could that be? I had an idea though. I'll just get the return address off the crate and ship it back easy peasy. So my sister went back to my house. It was around dusk. We went downstairs and grabbed the crate and bingo, it was there. I went and got some nails and rebuilt the crate to put the machine into it. Now, I am not sure if it was the machine that made me do this, or if I'm just an idiot, but I decided to have one more round. My logic is my sister is right there if there is an issue, and she can get me off. I started playing my final game, but when the ball finally dropped into the hole, I went to walk away, but my hands would not move. I pulled and pulled, but nothing. When I went to look at them, my face dropped. Metallic hands had grown out of the buttons, holding my wrist in place. My sister screamed, and I looked to see where her eyes had traveled, and they traveled to the clown head. Its mouth and a full-toothed smile had come to life. It was making its descent down to me, opening its mouth as wide as it could. It would eat me whole if it reached me, so I had to do something fast. With all my strength, I yanked my hands away from the machine. Blood spewed down as my skin flayed upon pulling. Blinding pain shot up my arms to my shoulders. At the last second, my hands were freed. I was able to duck down as the clown's mouth clamped shut. We turned around and ran out of the house. While I was in the hospital, someone was able to get rid of the goddamn pinball machine. I never asked who, and don't care as long as it was gone. This was a very traumatic experience, as I'm sure you understand. I had to sell my house a few months later because I woke up in the middle of the night hearing the faint sounds of the pinball machine beckoning me. I needed to get my story out there because as I was looking online today, I came across an ad of someone selling the Clown Times pinball machine. I don't want anyone making the same mistake I did, so if you come across this ad, please for the love of everything, do not buy it. Do you ever wake up sore with no explanation for the pain? How about scratches on your arms and legs with no explanation? If so, this warning might be for you. After my ex and I broke up, I started going for night walks. Long, aimless strolls around town after dark. The cool night air cleared my head. Putting one foot in front of the other gave me a sense of purpose. And if nothing else, it filled up the hours that we used to spend together with something other than resentful remembering. Lately though, I'm afraid to go out after dark. It started 3 nights ago. I usually turned around at the ugly 1970s high school at the edge of town. But that night, the breeze was cool and fresh and I hadn't seen a soul. It was like I had the world to myself. I decided to make a loop by cutting across the field that separated the 24-hour gas station from the suburb next door. There was a full moon, so I hoped I might even see some wildlife. I was enjoying the fact that no one else seemed to be out, but it should have been a warning, especially when I saw the car stopped in the middle of the empty road, its driver's side door wide open. At the time, I just lifted an eyebrow and moved on. It was strange, sure, but you see a lot of strange things walking around at night. The gas station too was empty. The lights were on. The country station played from the speakers, but there was no one at the register. Perhaps the night shift guy was just in the back, unloading boxes or something. But I was starting to get a little nervous. Where did everyone go? That was when I saw the man in the field. He'd been so stiff, so still in the silvery light, that at first, I'd taken him for a pole or something. He was just standing there, like a scarecrow in pajamas, staring up at the moon. As I watched, he began to spin. He spun until he lifted right off the ground and twirled through the air like some kind of nightmarish toy top. He spun through the air with the moths and nightbirds and, oh God, there were dozens of them. Some of them people I knew, spinning wildly through the night sky. Fascinated, I crept closer through the knee-high misty grass. More people were walking out of the black wall of forest at the edge of the field. They wore everything from business suits to nothing at all. Like they just stopped whatever they were doing, even showering or work, to come to this field and spin. I realized the helpless figures above me were moaning softly as they twirled, although whether in pain or pleasure, I couldn't tell. On the street behind me, another car rolled slightly to a stop. Its driver climbed out of the door with the wheels still rolling and walked towards the field like a sleepwalker. But when she saw me, she froze. The moonlight in her eyes shone an eerie silver green color as she raised her arm and pointed at me like an accusing judge. The figures above me had stopped spinning. They hovered, arms straight out, staring at me. One of them lifted through the air, gentle as a floating feather, then plunged like a swooping hawk. I recognized the face of the bald cashier from the sandwich shop a second before his clawed hand dug into my shoulder. The force of it knocked me over onto the dewy ground, but I could see that the others were also preparing to swoop. The woman stood like a statue with her arm outreached between me and my path of retreat, so I charged forward across the misty field towards the suburb on the other side. With a slam, I felt the head of a child hit my back. An elderly woman's teeth gazed my ribs. Floating bodies flickered around me, pursuing me like birds defending their nest. I twisted my ankle in the soggy dirt, cut by thorns and battered by the flying figures. I kept moving until a teenage girl floating above me tangled her fingers in my hair. With horror, I felt myself lifting off the ground, up toward the cold, cruel face of the full moon. I shook my head wildly, heard and felt the sickening sounds of hair ripped out of my head. But I fell, and suddenly, I was through to the other side. One by one, my friends and neighbors drifted back to their positions 100 feet in the air, spinning in the moonlight. I went home by the darkest route I could find. I didn't encounter a single person on the street, but occasionally, I'd see a few hovering above me. Today in the sandwich shop, the bald cashier seemed to have no recollection of what happened during the night. He just rubbed at his neck like it hurt him while he rang up my order. I think I'm going to stick to day walks from now on. My 15-year-old niece had recently passed away due to complications with pneumonia. Before she died, she told everyone that she wanted me, her aunt, to have her diary. To this day, I don't know why she wanted me, someone who was barely older than her, to have it. What I found inside is troubling. I received permission from her parents to disclose what was inside. If I find out this consent is withdrawn for any reason, this will be removed. Names, dates, and locations will be changed to protect whoever was involved. October 8th. Dear Diary, today I found out that there's a locked door in the basement. I went down the basement to grab a box of Mom's stuff and found the door. Mom told me that it's been locked since before they moved in. I must see what's inside. October 9th. Dear Diary, I tried every key we had to find out what was inside the door. None of them worked. Fuck. October 11th. Dear Diary, yesterday was pretty busy. We had guests come over, so I didn't have time to write. I heard from a few family friends that the local thrift store has a skeleton key that might let me into the door. I'll check it out tomorrow. October 12th. Dear Diary, yes, I bought the skeleton key. It was around 75 cents, which was a steal. I'll have to wait until tomorrow to try out the key, as tomorrow everyone will be out of the house. October 13th. Dear Diary, I did it. I got into the room. It's really dusty in here, but I think if I clean it up a bit, I'll be able to hang out. October 14th. Dear Diary, Aunt May found out I managed to get into the room. She helped me clean it up a bit, and we managed to even bring a few lights in. It really looks fantastic. I wish I could take a picture and show you. October 17th. Dear Diary, sorry I haven't been updating. I've been hanging out in the room a lot lately, much to my mom's anger. She doesn't like that I finally have a place to myself. She claims that I'm gonna get sick from the mold. There is no mold, Beatrice. October 18th. Dear Diary, I fell asleep in the room last night. I saw something. I don't know what it was, but it was outside the room and it was trying to get in. I'm scared. You're the only thing I brought down with me. I'm scared. October 20th. Dear Diary, the thing is gone. I managed to get out of the room. I almost don't want to go back in. but something lures me in. I don't want what happened to happen again, but I'm sure if I at least bring my phone with me, I'll be able to call for help if needed. October 21st. Dear Diary, this was a mistake. This was a mistake. I want to get out of here, but I can't. It's back. I can't breathe. I'm scared. I want my mommy. There's no fucking service in here. Damn it. October 22nd. Dear Diary, I found out that Aunt May left some snacks and water in here when we cleaned it out a few days ago. At least I won't starve. It's still trying to get in. I can't get any bars to call for help. I know they're looking for me. Let's hope they find me before whatever is outside that door does. October 23rd. Dear Diary, damn it, it's so hot in here. The pounding won't stop. I'm scared. I want my mom. Why didn't I bring a fan? On the bright side, I finally managed to find service and text my mom. She said that she'll do whatever she can to get the door open. She had the nerve to try telling me that there was nothing outside the room. October 29th. Dear Diary, they managed to get me out. They tried to tell me that the door had jammed and that was the reason I couldn't leave. But they couldn't explain why I heard that banging. October 31st. Dear Diary, I don't feel any better. The doctor says it's pneumonia. I don't know how I got it. Maybe that thing gave it to me. If I make it, I'm cementing that door shut. The diary entries stop here, mostly due to her rapidly worsening state. Just 9 days after that last entry, she passed away due to complications with pneumonia. Nobody will tell me why she heard stuff that wasn't there, but I might go down and see for myself. It may be stupid, but I want to know what killed my niece. Do you believe in ghosts? I certainly don't. Or at least, I never believed in them before. My grandmother had a house flipping business. She would buy old houses that were in need of a lot of TLC, and then she'd go all in, making the houses completely unrecognizable. It was her thing, and she was pretty damn good at it. My siblings and I worked with her for many years, and learned a lot of secrets in the process. When Nana died last year, she had 3 houses that she bought for flipping in the few months before she died. And as it turns out, she left my siblings and I each one of these 3 houses. Not wasting any time, my husband and I went to view the house. And at first glance, we knew it had great bones. It needed a lot of work, yes, but it was nothing that I couldn't handle. I've learned from the best, after all. We moved to the house and rented out our own while we worked on fixing this one. Immediately we could tell that it was more complicated than we anticipated. The electricity wasn't the best. The plumbing was unreliable. And most importantly, all the windows and doors needed urgent repairs as they kept opening and closing on their own accord. That was a major issue because how can we stay in a house where an intruder could get in at any moment through any of the many broken doors and windows? We asked everyone we knew for help, and in a matter of 2 days, everyone had worked together so wonderfully and the new doors and windows were installed without a hitch. Now we could sleep soundly. Right? Right. At least, that's what we thought. At night, just as we were drifting off to sleep, is when we started to hear it. It's not just the sounds of doors opening and closing on their own. There was this plethora of strange sounds and other oddities around the house. Scratches, creaks, things being misplaced, lights flickering, you name it. It's just an old house. Old houses are weird. My husband constantly assured me, and I believed him. We ignored the sounds to the best of our abilities and continued on with the work the house needed. We put our sweat and tears into the house, but nothing made it flourish more than our blood. Each time one of us got hurt and bled, the house absorbed it too fast and magically everything looked brighter inside the house. The doll walls looked shiny, the floors would creak less, and even the house plants that were looking drab were suddenly full of life. At times, I swear I could feel the house itself breathing. I don't know how after all this, we didn't notice that something was afoot. I mean, the evidence was right there that something was terribly wrong with this house, but we just kept lying to ourselves. We did start to notice though. Too late, but we did. Yesterday, we decided to treat ourselves, so we cuddled on the sofa, getting ready to watch some Netflix, and had all the snacks we needed for a long cozy night. "Mommy, can you come over, please?" Our daughter called out. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied automatically, getting up. My husband placed his hand on mine to stop me, and just as he did, I realized why and sat back down. My eyes were wide and his look mirrored mine. "You heard that?" I whispered. He nodded, and that was all I needed to burst into tears. Later, my husband was asleep while I remained tossing and turning for a while in bed, still on edge from the incident that ruined our evening, when I heard the scratches coming from across the hall. Now, I've never been one to be scared of the dark, but for some reason, every time I walk this hall in the dark, a sense of dread and foreboding washes over me. I swallowed my nerves and got quietly out of the room, headed down the hall. Some poor animal must have snuck in during the day and was now trying to get out. It was when I got closer to the room at the end of the hall that I heard the whispers. Combined with the scratches, it was enough to set my teeth on edge. I slowly pushed the door open and burst into tears once more. Our daughter lay in her bed, hooked up to the life support that kept her heart beating. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry," I whimpered, going over to stand next to her. "Please stay, Mommy," my daughter said from behind me, and I whipped around so quickly I almost tripped. There she was, my darling daughter, wearing the beautiful dress she wore the day of the accident. The accident that killed her. I knew what I was seeing was illogical, but I felt myself sink to my knees in front of her and wrap my arms around her. "That's not possible," my husband whispered, standing at the door. "Daddy!" Our daughter ran to him and flung her arms around him, but he backed away, shaking his head, repeating over and over that it's not possible. "Hug me, Daddy." He shook his head and took a step back. "I said, hug me." The sound that came out of her was unnatural and so loud it knocked him off his feet. "This is not our daughter," he managed to say to me before the door slammed itself in his face. I heard him as he banged and slammed himself at the door, trying to get back into the room, but the door didn't budge. Logically, the door shouldn't close like that, because we have yet to install a latch mechanism. Something was keeping that door shut. Something didn't want to let my husband in. My daughter turned and looked at me with her sweetest of smiles. "You will hug me, Mommy, right?" "Of course, darling, of course," I said as I wrapped her in my arms once more. It looks like my daughter and it feels like my daughter. How can I not hug her? It's morning now and my daughter is nowhere to be seen. My husband is pleading with me to leave the house. He's packing all of our things to go. But how could I? I have to stay. My daughter is here, and she's begging me not to leave her again. "It's so dark and lonely without me," she says. "I have to stay." She was holding a knife and asking me to join her, but she disappeared just as the first ray of dawn made their way into the room. Tonight she'll come again to ask me to join her. The more I think about it, the more I think I should. I'll be honest, I'm not much of a family man. My career kept me away from my family for most of my daughter's childhood, and once my wife died, absentee would be a generous description of me. Emotionally, that is. It had been so sudden, and the love of my life, Erica, was taken far too soon while I was away. These last 3 years have been rough. I'm used to suffering, loss, and grief. This one hit different. There's an emptiness inside me I can't fully describe that I don't think will ever really go away. Because of this, it wasn't surprising when Aria had told me she was going to study abroad for the upcoming semester. She had been at a local college the last 2 years. I think she had enough of our awkward Tuesday night dinners and needed a break. One can only handle so many hours in painfully awkward silence, I suppose. For that reason, I couldn't blame her for leaving. She had said that it's not what it was, but I knew. The opportunities for growth, connections, and exploring the outside world were all lies to avoid saying she needed some time apart from me. She didn't really need to find herself. She needed to find herself further away from me. It stung, yet I understood. Like I said, I'm not much of a family man. I had taught her some things as a kid to protect herself, but outside of that, we didn't have much of a relationship. I'm not proud saying these things out loud. I'd love to be closer with my little Aria. I love her with all my heart. I'm simply a realist. So to say I was thrilled when I received that FaceTime call was an understatement. Contact had been at a minimum since she left, and I hadn't seen her actual face in months. There'd be a few texts here and there, and a couple of questions about how I used to do things. Seeing her call though, I couldn't hit that green button quick enough. As her dark brown eyes and bright smile appeared on my screen, I almost had to fight back tears. "Hey baby girl, how are you? You look so happy. And you dyed your hair. A blonde now. Who knew?" "Thanks, Dad. I fit in better here as a blonde, but things are great. Europe is so pretty, and I've learned so much about myself. I truly couldn't be happier," she said while walking down a lit-up street. I could see she was telling the truth. It'd been ages since I'd seen her smile like that. What do they say nowadays? It hit me right in the feels. "I'm so happy to hear that, Aria. What have you been up to? Tell me everything. It's been a little while since we talked, and this old man has all day." "Well, there's one thing I had a question about. You're the expert in this area, so I wanted some advice," she said as the demeanor on her face became a little more serious. "Okay, "Ask away," I replied. "There have been some disappearances around here lately," but I cut her off. "Now I'm a little worried. You're walking alone and it has to be pretty late over there," I said half jokingly. "Oh, Dad, you don't have to worry about me. There's just one little problem. There are a lot, like dozens," she said while rounding a corner into an alley. Before she could say another word, the frame abruptly shifted unnaturally to show her surroundings. I heard some rustling and some mumbling. "Aria?" More mumbling. "Aria? Hello?" The mumbling intensified a bit. It seemed cheerful. What was going on? "Aria?" The frame recentered. "Oops, sorry, Dad. I bumped into someone as I was turning the corner. I was just apologizing to them." I let out the breath I didn't know I had been holding. "You sure know how to worry your old man." "Wait a second." "Why? What's up?" she asked. I noticed someone behind my daughter now. His silhouette was approaching quickly. As he got closer, I could start to make out his features. Long wavy dark hair, clean shaven, looked local, early 30s, and something flashes near his midsection. Was that a vertigo? I yelled. Instinctively, she swung around just as he reached her. There was a struggle and the phone fell. "I finally caught you, you little bitch," I heard the man yell. The phone had landed in a way that I could see everything. Panicked, I started to yell out at the man. "Take your hands off my daughter. Leave her alone. Aria." They continued to struggle back and forth. Gradually, my daughter started to get forced back to a wall. He cursed her vehemently. "Please stop this." Aria lost her footing and the man raised his knife. He swung down hard. It pierced my daughter's arm and I heard her howl in pain. Tears started streaming down my face. Not again. Why was I always helpless to protect my family? I continued to plead, to beg this man to stop, but he either didn't hear me or didn't care. He slashed Aria again and again. He screamed at her. Her protective stance had limited the blows to her arms, but these were deep lacerations. She wouldn't last long like this. Blood was everywhere. This maniac wasn't going to stop. I couldn't help but think what a cruel world this is. I cursed any and every god there was. How could they let this happen? Maybe I deserved it, but my daughter? Her hands weren't stained with blood like mine. This only started to turn my fear and sorrow into rage. "Let her go, you bastard. I'll kill you. You hear me? I've seen your face. I'll kill you. I've done it before, and I'll do it again." Something I said must have caught his attention, because for one split second, he hesitated. That created an opening, and thank God my little girl took it. With all her might, she kicked into the front of his knee. I don't know which was louder, his scream or the cracking of bones. His body staggered back and he howled in agony. I watched his gaze slowly meet his leg, now bent entirely in the wrong direction, and panic flooded his face. He stumbled forward, his head raised to look up at my daughter, only she wasn't there. His eyes followed the trail of blood beside him. Before he could finish, Aria's right arm had wrapped around his neck and tightened. His body squirmed. Even in the limited light, I could see his face changing color. Aria grunted as her assailant struggled to escape her grasp. I cannot imagine the pain she must have been in to choke a man out with such deep laceration on her arms. but that inner toughness she must have gotten from her mother held firm. He continued to fight though, and in his flailing, he was able to strike her. She let out a small yelp, yet held firm. She leaned back, and the grip tightened. The man's movement slowed, and I could tell he was going out. Moments later, he finally was. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. My daughter was safe. She set the man down and crawled over to the phone. Arya? Thank God you're okay. This was not the time to hold back my joy. God, gods, whoever, we're on good terms again. My bad. I'm fine, Dad. Don't worry. She replied. She took a few deep inhales to compose herself. Her outfit was completely soaked. Whatever color it had been before was long gone. Now it was a deep crimson. Thank God for your training though. I can't believe you remembered the code word. I'm just so thankful you're alright, I said, wiping tears from my face. Who was he? Has he attacked you before? She had a puzzled reaction on her face and walked back over to the man. She pushed his body up against the wall of the alley so he was sitting up and stared intently at his face. There were a few seconds of silence. Oh, I think I do know him, she said. The big smile she'd worn earlier had returned, except seeing her covered in blood made it less wholesome this time. Now it was actually kinda creepy. I'm pretty sure his girlfriend is the one I killed last Thursday. Shout out to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacy, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I really look forward to making more content for everyone.